We also have another mega story to deliver as Chris Bosh on Friday failed his physical exam with the Miami Heat, meaning he is not cleared to participate in camp. And this not only threatens his future with Miami, but perhaps the NBA as well. After a series of medical tests in recent days, the team could not clear the 11-time All-Star, who's been dealing with blood clots that ended his seasons, the last 2 seasons, at All-Star break. Earlier, I spoke with Ira Winderman of the South Florida Sun Sentinel about Bosh's bad day. Ira, this is so interesting because just last week, Chris Bosh said, "I'm ready to play," but now the Heat feel, no, you're not ready to play. But this wasn't unexpected, was it?
No, I think you could almost look back and say this is how the Heat felt in last February when Chris had the relapse, how the Heat felt during the playoffs when certainly with Chris they could have possibly won Game 7 and played the Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference Finals, and how the Heat have approached the entire offseason. So I think it's a case of a team and a medical staff saying this is not a condition that a player should be participating in NBA basketball. And I think Chris has felt all along, well, yes, my medical people are telling me yes. So you could almost make an argument the announcement from the Heat today was almost a rubber stamping of how the team felt in February, in May, and likely for most of the offseason.
So basically the Heat doctors basically had their stance while Chris Bosh was looking for solutions. Is that fair?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that the Heat doctors were waiting to see how the physical would come out. And Vince, it's very interesting when you read the wording of the Heat release. They never say why he failed the physical. We know there's a lot of laws and rules regarding health, including in the collective bargaining agreement, what you could say and what you can't say. I believe, and again, I'm not a doctor, but I believe when the Heat did these tests, they were looking for certain things, certain benchmarks, certain parameters, certain things in the tests. When they found them, they felt just as before, you cannot play NBA professional basketball with these type of test results. I'm not so sure that Chris Bosh didn't say, well, I believe and my medical people believe I could. And I mean, we were at loggerheads, in February, in May, and in the summer. I think we might just be back in the same position that the Heat and Chris Bosh have always been.
Yeah, well, this was a tense situation anyway. So now what level does it rise to at this point?
I think, unfortunately, or maybe because what we do for a living, fortunately, it's become a PR battle. This was not accidental that Chris Bosh started his video blog, that Chris Bosh did a Facebook Live chat session, that the Heat kept saying, we can't comment because of rules, until they reached a point where they issued this statement about Chris failing his physical without saying why he failed his physical. So I think this always has been in the public relations realm anyway, and I think this was the way of the Heat saying, hey, we need to get our voice out there as well. And anyone who knows Pat Riley knows. With his, I would almost say, disdain for social media in the first place among his players, I think this was really gnawing at the Heat, that this had become so one-sided in recent days.
Yeah, Ira, I know that the Heat care personally about Chris Bosh, but ultimately this comes down to business. So moving forward, what's next for Chris Bosh, and what's next from a business standpoint for the Miami Heat, do you believe?
Well, I can't tell you for Chris Bosh because until we hear from Chris Bosh, we won't know how he truly views this latest ramification. From the Heat, and let's be honest, because this is a business, there was always a secondary room behind the medical office considering the implications. If Chris Bosh does not play again this season, if Chris Bosh is ruled out by the physical, the Heat will regain his salary cap space on February 9th, the one-year anniversary of his last game. That's an interesting time of year because it's before the trading deadline. So should a team be looking to trade a $20-something million player? In previous years, you would say, well, you can't make that deal without matching salaries. This year you could. The example being last year with Dwight Howard and the Rockets, if they wanted to move Dwight, no one had that kind of salary cap space easily available. The Heat could have that on February 9th going forward. If not, the Heat could take that salary cap space along with the money they saved by not re-signing Dwayne Wade and become active players in free agency in 2017 offseason, lockout allowing. So, yeah, it changes the Heat's long-term outlook, but again, there's still other benchmarks you have to go through that. The Heat have to waive Chris Bosh, an independent doctor selected by both the Players Association and the NBA have to declare whether Chris is out or not. If the Heat waive him and he's not declared out for his career, not only do the Heat have to continue paying the money, as they will anyway, they also would absorb that salary cap hit going forward. So right now, this is still about the medical and the personal side. But yes, there are, in coming days and weeks and months, very much an NBA salary cap, collective bargaining agreement side to this as well.
But Ira, finally, if there isn't a big medical change for Chris Bosh, I mean, are we really looking at a very possible end to his playing career?
I would say yes, but again, I really have to defer to Chris Bosh because, again, you talk about, we see athletes all the time taking their life in their hands, taking risk, whether it's in auto racing or other sports, MMA. Athletes are different than us. Sometimes we would get a diagnosis and go, of course we wouldn't. Athletes so love the game you don't know. So is this the end of Chris Bosh's career? I'm going to be honest. No one knows, and no one can tell us until Chris Bosh tells us. And if his drive to continue playing with 5 children, $200 million in career earnings, 2 NBA World Championships, likely a spot in the Hall of Fame, and he says, no, I love this game, I want to find a way, I would never doubt a professional athlete. So I think we really have to sit back and say, what say you, Chris Bosh, while at the same time wishing he and his family the best of health, because that's what matters most.
Ira Winderman, always good stuff from you. Thank you so much for the time. It's going to be a heck of an opening to Miami Heat camp. Thank you.
Yeah, sadly, it has to be about this, but you know what? Chris Bosh's health should be paramount above all else.
No question. Thank you, sir.